Your marketing is just an instrument that you use to get the word out, but your branding is the actual melody that attracts people to you. So that's the best analogy.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Coffee with Tea. I'm your host, Tanya Tyler, and we're going to be catching up with Mr. Eddie Egesi. He was our branding expert from last season. Before we dive in, of course, I always like to have a catch up and remind us who Mr. Eddie is. So, Mr. Eddie, I'm going to turn the mic over to you. Tell a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So to those who don't know who I am, my name is Eddie Egesi, and I'm a branding expert, speaker, and founder of APRICOT Branding. So at APRICOT Branding, I help small to mid-sized business owners really clarify their strategy, refine their design, and amplify their messaging so that way they could achieve bigger results in their marketing and sales efforts. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, we had such a great conversation on our last episode. I'm definitely going to make sure the link is in there so you can follow up on our last episode. But we were talking about, he gave us like a general understanding of what branding was and how you maybe, I like the analogy he had said, you can't catch an antelope in West Africa. So, but, Mr. Eddie, I know you briefly talked about, why you got into it. But again, can you remind the audience, like, why is branding so important to you?
Yeah, so it all came from my background in the creative field. So I used to do a lot of creative work, and then I started to do a lot of work for business owners. And I just figured out that just the creativity alone is not enough, because the creativity is kind of like the spicing in the food. So by itself, it may not seem very potent, but when you combine it with other things, that's where it gets its power from, as part of the menu. So it's kind of like your secret sauce. So that's what I kind of did. So I was able to combine that creativity with that marketing expertise to really help business owners really elevate their brands. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, the last time you came out, you really gave us, I should say, let me acknowledge me. You gave me a great understanding about what does that look like? And you gave us the 5 key elements to branding success. And you were talking about how collaboration was one of your biggest things too. And I know that was part of when you look up on you talk about collaboration and your creative work. Is that sort of what led you into the marketing, knowing that there were so many people who maybe didn't understand branding? Is that sort of like how you pivoted to?
Yeah, I also noticed that there were a lot of marketing agencies who they didn't really understand or have that creative gift. So I first started off just collaborating with other marketing and branding agencies, and then from there I was able to create my own thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And like I said, we're just taking a deeper dive, a bigger chunk of one of the branding strategies he mentioned from his last podcast. And so we're going to talk more about what is this branding uniqueness. So, when you talk about, I always like to give the audience an understanding. When you talk about branding uniqueness, what are you talking about there, Mr. Eddie? Can you explain to us what you're talking about first before we dive in?
Yeah, so just to understand the context, so the world has changed dramatically over the past few years. So many years ago, if you wanted to start a business, you only had to compete with other businesses in your local community or your local village or your local town. But nowadays, with the rise of the internet, with the .com bubble, globalization, all these things have made it much harder for the small business owner to compete, because your customers are exposed to a variety of different options. So nowadays, you have to compete with hundreds, if not thousands of competitors, and some of them are from other parts of the country or from other parts of the world. So this is a huge challenge for a lot of business owners, especially if what you're selling isn't very unique. Like, let's say you sell water. So how can you really market your offer in a way that's really unique from all the other options so that it really stands out and attracts your ideal customers? So that's what brand uniqueness is all about, is how do we stand out when we're in a highly competitive industry?
Right. So when you start, there was a couple of nuggets that I picked up in that definition you were talking about. It's like basically asking yourself a couple of key questions, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think the biggest question was you were asking, and correct me if I'm wrong. You said basically is how do we stick out? Is that like the first key question that you maybe need to understand about your brand? What makes you different? Can you explain that?
Yeah, that's one of the essential goals of branding. So it's the art of differentiation, pretty much. So that's a phrase from David Breyer. So branding is the art of differentiation. So we're trying to develop a brand that's much different from everything else that's out there so that we can really stand out in our industries and achieve bigger success. So if you look at a lot of successful brands and their stories behind them, they were able to uncover that uniqueness, that secret sauce that allowed them to really stand out. And some of them were even able to make history. So it's really important to have a brand that's really different from all the other options because there's so many people selling the same thing today that what the world needs is just more difference. That's what customers need. They just need something that's more different. So
Right. So when you talk about we're talking about like say maybe somebody comes across this video who's like brand new to like their business and stuff like that. Are there like key things that you would advise them to start figuring out what makes them different? How do you go deeper into figuring out? I mean, are there key questions you have to ask, when their clients are come to you like, what do you solve? Can you I don't do the marketing thing. So can you help me? Like, what would you advise your clients to start out to differentiate themselves?
yeah, so I would say the baby steps is to just first understanding your niche or your industry and how it works, because different industries have different needs, different mandates, things like that. So you would first start by trying to understand the industry that you're in, number one, or the niche. By niche, I mean the category that you're in. So let's say you're a subscription business, that's a niche. So your niche is just the category that you're in, and then there's your industry. So you need to understand that. That's the first step. And then you would also need to really analyze the competition. So who are the other people in this industry, in this niche? So you probably can't really analyze every single person because you probably don't have the time or the budget. There's probably hundreds of people. Well, you can probably just take a look at maybe 10 people that's closest to what you're doing. So you may have your direct competitors. So your direct competitors, these are the people who are selling the exact same thing to the exact same people. And then your indirect competitors, these are the other brands that they might not be selling what you're selling, but they're also trying to get your customers' attention. They're also speaking to the same people as you are.
Right.
Yeah. And then you have the market share dominators. So those are like the most successful people in your industry. So when you look at all these types of people, then it's all about what are they doing right? What are they doing wrong? What can I learn from? What can I do different from everyone else? So after you've really understood the competition and the industry, you would also need to understand the customers. That's a key part of it, is the customers, because they're the ones who have the buying power. So a lot of times when you look at your customers, they may have certain needs that other people aren't providing. There might be other underserved communities that other brands aren't catering to. So when you're able to really take a deep dive into who your customers are, then you could uncover more opportunities for you to differentiate yourself. So that's the third step. And then there's also the journey that customers go through. So when I say the journey, I'm referring to like the different ways that customers interact with your brand. So it could be, how are they going to find you online? How are you going to deliver the service? How do you handle customer support? Things like that. So these are all branded touch points that create a journey in the customer's mind. So when you're able to really understand the journey, it could even be like how they visit your store, how they browse through your store. These are all opportunities for you to make things much more different from everyone else.
Right. Right. So it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong. It's not like really about your how you want to be. It's like what is the customers looking for? Is it coming down to, you said, researching your customers? So maybe I'm hearing, maybe I'm correct, incorrect. A lot of us start out as business like, this is what I want to do. Is that the wrong way to start out in our businesses or help us?
Yeah, that's a huge misconception because so your marketing it's a conversation between you and your customers. Your branding or your marketing is all a conversation. So if you start off with me, you're gonna chase people away. So it's like so it's more about us, right? Meet that relationship between you and your customers. What do they want that I could really offer them. So
I
yeah,
like
up a relationship. Yeah,
I like that because we always start off with me. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to create. This is what, and
yeah,
then we were like, we struggle like, oh my God, I can't figure out why I don't have clients. So
yeah.
that's the biggest thing you said. The biggest thing we're doing wrong for us is the misconception.
Yeah, you could
Uh,
still consider yourself. I'm not saying you should entirely forget about yourself. You should still consider yourself, but you should also consider your customers a little bit more. But you might also consider like, what are my strengths? What are my passions? So all these things could also help.
okay.
Yeah.
I I like where we're going with this because now I'm starting to get more curious about some of the key questions that we might ask. But I want to stop right here real quick and remind everybody that Eddie has been dropping nuggets. So if you've been picking them up, please follow up with a comment down below because I think the biggest thing maybe in this as we talk about your brand uniqueness, maybe we need to start asking more questions. Is that what you're saying? It's like get more curious about what our strength is, what the customer experience, and how do you do that? How do you start to uncover that kind of stuff? I know I gave you a lot of questions.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So obviously, it's much easier for yourself to uncover. But when it comes to your customers, it's more about probably having a conversation with them. So all these things take a certain level of skill. So you might need to hire a consultant, or you can do it yourself if you feel like you have the capacity to do so. So you would also need to know like the right questions to ask to uncover the right insights that you need. So these are what like branding consultants and experts are trained to do, is to uncover those insights. But sometimes just by having a nice conversation, that could also uncover some really helpful nuggets that you could apply to your business.
Right. I like that because I have another question too, because I have what, I know a lot of people are into this text and they don't, rather not have this conversation type thing. But what would you say to a business owner who's afraid to have those kind of conversations? Are there ways that you can have this conversation that makes it a little bit more enjoyable or not so like probes, like you're like interrogating your your
Oh
customers?
no, it's not supposed to be that way. Yeah, it's just a really casual conversation, just like we're having right now. So it's just a simple conversation with kind of like with a friend, and you're just trying to gain a better understanding of, and they should know it also. They know that you're gonna use that information to improve their like how they experience your brand, to improve your offers, things like that. So they know it already, and they want you to. So they'll probably be open to providing you with that info. So you would just let them know that the information provided would be used to create better services, better offers, things like that, better content. So
So it's like you said, it's building a relationship with your customer, but also you're building a relationship with yourself because you're starting to know what you can do. I always hear, what solution do you provide to their problem, right? But you can't have a conversation. You don't know what you're solving unless you have that conversation. Is that correct?
yeah, and you would also need to have a lot of empathy. So those are the key ingredients: is empathy and creative thinking. So someone with a lot of empathy, they can have a really simple conversation with someone, and then they could uncover all kinds of subliminal needs that that person has or emotions. You're really good at putting themselves in that person's shoes. So it's going to take that level of skill to put yourself in other people's shoes. And then some brands, they're actually their own target audience. So that has also been really helpful, is that some entrepreneurs, they have been their own target audience. So they were able to look at themselves and then target people who are similar to them and who have, similar needs and lifestyles, things like that. So that could be another option also to make it much easier to target people who are similar to you or people who are similar to your friends. So
So, so if I'm understanding, you're basically using yourself as an avatar. Is that what you're? Is
yeah,
that
you could
way?
do that. People have done that and it's been successful at it. So you could, yeah. Mhm.
And for those who are not familiar with an avatar, can you explain what is an avatar for those who are maybe new in business?
Okay, yeah. So there are different words for it, but personally I call them personas. So the goal of avatars or personas is just to gain a clear picture of who your customers are. It's just to get a better picture of, who they are and what they're like. So obviously everyone is different, right? But when you look at the different customers that you've had in the past, or the people who you're trying to target, you would notice certain patterns. So it's all about the patterns, because branding is kind of an art form. So you're trying to find patterns of thinking, of lifestyles, of behaviors, and then you're able to put them all into one picture to give you a better picture. And then you could then use the avatar as a reference point. So for example, if you're developing a headline for a website, you could look at the avatar or the persona, and then you could then judge which headline would convert better based on the kind of people we're speaking to. So it's just a marketing tool pretty much. So you can use it to really discuss with your team. Especially a lot of time, if you want to invest in marketing, they're going to ask you about who your customers are. So if you have the avatar, you can provide them with that information. So the first step is just to know who you're trying to reach, who you're speaking to. So,
And I have one question before we wrap it up. Is there anything like really significant between branding and marketing, or do people mix it up, or are they two separate things really?
Okay. Yeah. So this is actually a really popular argument. So some people see branding and marketing as completely separate, while some people see branding and marketing as related. And now some people see it as the exact same thing. So the way I see it is that they're both connected. So the best analogy that I use is that your marketing is just an instrument that you use to get the word out, but your branding is the actual melody that attracts people to you. So that's the best analogy to really understand the relationship, because if you have a really nice instrument, but the melody is really bad, then that means you're going to spend a lot of money on marketing and it's not going to work, because your brand isn't really clear. It's not really speaking to people. And at the same time, if you have a really nice melody, but you don't really have the right instruments, then no one will hear your melody, because your brand isn't going to reach that many people. So your marketing is just a vehicle that you use. So it's the instruments, or like the mechanism that you use to really get your word out, to get your business out there. Yeah.
Oh, I like that. Thank you so much. Like I said, I always like talking to you because you always break it down with the analogies and stuff like that. And which sort of leads us into our next question. What's the one thing you want the audience to take away from our interview today?
Yeah. So the one thing that I want them to take is that brand differentiation is not as complicated or difficult as you may seem. It just takes a lot of empathy it's about really putting yourself in the shoes of your customers. So it takes empathy, number one, and a lot of creative thinking to really think outside the box, because a lot of people, they don't really think outside the box. And then when someone comes up with a new idea that completely transforms everything, everyone is like, why didn't I think of that? So it just seems very obvious when someone else does it. But there are a lot of opportunities for you to really differentiate your brand and really stand out. So you just have to really think outside the box, get more creative, and just try to really gain a better understanding of who you're speaking to. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, it does make it easier when you see somebody else do it. Like, oh man, that wasn't my thoughts.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Eddie, as we wrap up, where can people find more information about you, your services, and what you do?
Yeah, so you can find me on my website. It's apricotbranding.com. I also have a blog and a free download called The 5 Branding Mistakes to Avoid. So it's a lot of helpful resources if you're a small business owner and you're trying to learn a little bit more about branding and marketing. So
yeah, thank you so much. You're always so enlightening. And like I said, you break it down with the analogies too. So that's why I love talking to you, and how easy you make it understandable. I guess that's why you do what you do. So again, Thank you so much for sharing your insight with us. Would you be willing to come back, maybe have another conversation with us?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. And I want to remind everybody who tuned in that, yes, feedback is always welcome. Remember, the links that Eddie mentioned will be posted down in the description box below. So please make sure you check out those gems down there. Again, if you picked up some golden nuggets that Eddie has dropped today and you picked them up and you've enjoyed it, hit that like button over there. And remember, if you want to get more insight that Eddie shared and many of our other great guests, hit that subscribe button again. And remember, Take things in stride, go with the flow, and create your own path. And we will see you back here on another episode of Coffee with Tea. All right. Bye bye.